What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you another episode of our weekly installment that we have on the channel. That is our ranking show. This week, we're talking about week 12. We're going to go in depth on guys that we have discrepancies with between ourselves, between ACR, and it should give you guys, again, another weekly source of entertainment as always, because you guys really appreciate this show from what we've seen from both DMs, comment section, etc. You guys have shown a lot of feedback. But before we get started, Corey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. We always try and just talk about as many players as we possibly can on this show. That's kind of how it works. We're usually just like, oh, what about this player, that player, this player, that player. It's to give you guys a chance to see where our heads are at, where your kind of decisions lie, and how we think everyone kind of stacks up on the week. And yeah, sometimes we rip on expert consensus for being too high on Hunter Henry. We're going to do it again this week. So I'm ready to go. Let's get into it.
For sure. Just going to mention quickly for those who are new to the channel, if you guys haven't watched this show already, we basically break down, again, our discrepancy between ourselves, expert consensus at all, the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end positions for our personal rankings. But anyways, we're going to start off with the quarterback position. But before we do so, we are going to hit that intro on y'all. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to start off with the quarterback position. Now, Corey, you could take it away. The viewers can see both of our rankings currently on the screen right now. Who are your biggest discrepancies to start off with at quarterback?
Quickly, I just want to take a victory lap because I had Deshaun Watson at QB2 on the week, and he absolutely went off. But I'll take a non-victory lap because I had Matt Stafford at QB12, and he did not go off. So, I mean, you win some, you lose some. But one guy that I have higher than consensus is Tua Tagovailoa, and obviously, this depends on his injury. He has a left thumb injury, I believe, is the injury he's dealing with. And Brian Flores basically said he's going to be not a game time decision, but they're going to monitor it closer to game time. It sounds like he's going to play, and I think he'll be just fine. But it's a left thumb injury, and he throws with his left hand. So it is definitely worth monitoring. Obviously, you want to be monitoring his injury in general, but he has a top 5 fantasy matchup for quarterbacks. The New York Jets, according to Pro Football Focus, are one of the worst pass defenses in terms of coverage. And he has potentially no ground game in this one, too. He will be without Salvin Ahmed. We don't know for sure if Myles Gaskin is going to be back. If that is the case, then that leaves him with Matt Breida, who's been kind of up and down this season, hasn't really done much, with Patrick Laird, who's more so of a pass-catching back and all that kind of stuff. So he could be forced to actually, put the team on his back and win one for his team this time instead of having Andrew Van Ginkel make 3 special teams plays and win the game for the Dolphins.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the victory lap you have on Watson. I can say the same. We both smart individuals have him at the quarterback too. So a little pat on the back there. Anyways, let's start. And same thing with Stafford. I had him at 13, 4 spots higher. So not so much of a victory lap.
Yeah. Anyways, Adrian Peterson stealing 2 goal line touchdowns is exactly what I expected to happen when I said that Kerryon Johnson was going to outscore him. Because Kerryon Johnson, 1, had he not fumbled, he would have had a better day. And 2, if he gets one of those touchdowns, has a great day because he looked actually pretty good in the receiving game and just on the ground. He looks like the better running back, and then he just gets none of the touchdowns. Typical.
For sure. And then on the reverse end for me, of course, I have in my one league the Deshaun Watson, Brandon Cook stack, and he just so happened to give the ball to all the touchdowns to Will Fuller. So, I mean, I'll take the points.
I have Deshaun Watson. I played against Brandon Cook, so that was like the best case scenario for me.
Yeah, for real. I'm going to start my list off with Josh Allen. I mean, I have him 4 spots lower, but again, this really isn't an indictment on Allen. It more so just, to me, outlines like an elite 6 tier of quarterbacks this week. I mean, if you can see my rankings right now, the list for me goes Mahomes, Watson, Murray, Herbert, Wilson, and then Allen. And then I do see a little bit of a break off between Allen.
I think Brady belongs in that tier with those guys this week. Really? Given the nature of Allen, Herbert, Brady, and Mahomes. Those 4 teams might combine for 180 points this week. I honestly the Chargers and Bills game and the Bucks and Chiefs game they're going to be in the 30s, both teams. I guarantee it.
Yeah, well, and that's actually similar to the guy I have at 7. Again, I do view it as a little bit of a step down, but I mean, I have Derek Carr 7 and Brady at 8. Those are the 2 projected highest scoring games of the weekend. It is going to be fun watching the Bucks and the Chiefs. and then the Raiders and the Falcons this weekend.
I hope it's fun to watch the Bucs and the Chiefs, because if they get killed, I'm going to be upset.
Yeah, for sure. Again, but me having Allen 4 spots lower isn't anything to say, oh, ECR shouldn't have him at 2. No, this more so just shows to me that there are a lot of really good options this week, and me having him at 6 versus 2 doesn't really mean a thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, the DFS ownership is going to be interesting, because this week there's going to be a couple, like we already have one quarterback above 35 points. I bet we see like 2 or 3 more, if not more than that go above that 30 to 35 point threshold that you need to like 2x in DFS. But anyways, Baker Mayfield's a guy I have higher than consensus. I have him 6 spots higher. I talked about him already on the start sit show, but I think he should be in for an efficient day against a top 3 matchup against the pass. It's finally clear weather for the Browns passing offense, 3 straight games plus their bye week. So we haven't actually seen their offense in a while throw the ball more than 25 times. Baker Mayfield threw the ball 20, 22, and 25 times in the last 3 games that they've played. And sure, could Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt absolutely run this game for the Browns?
I have fun.
Yeah, like Baker Mayfield could have 300 yards and no touchdowns because Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt absolutely go off. I understand that, but I think in this kind of game script that you're going to see in a matchup that's actually more favorable against the pass, it's still bad against the run too. But I do expect Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper to get back on track in the first game of clear weather without Odell Beckham.
Yeah, I like it. I'm actually going to shift to another guy that I'm lower on. And this is going to be Aaron Rodgers, quarterback from the Green Bay Packers. I currently have him at 3 spots lower than consensus. He is my quarterback 10 on the week. Consensus has him at 7. And the reason being, I mean, just the matchup against Chicago is really tough. I mean, Chicago defense yields the 4th least points to the quarterback position and profiles to be a low-scoring divisional game with Chicago missing their starting quarterback and Nick Foles. I just think that the Packers are going to go up early. It's going to be a mucky NFC North type game. And realistically, Aaron Rodgers is not going to have a lot of volume to realistically give you that top 7 type ceiling, in my opinion, this week. So while I like him, I mean, just other options around his range, for example, Carr faced the 32nd ranked Falcons defense against opposing quarterbacks and has a 54 over-under game. Tom Brady, as we mentioned, obviously profiles into the highest scoring expected game at 56 over-under. And then Cam Newton actually plays the 7th worst defense against quarterbacks in the Arizona Cardinals and still has a higher expected over-under than the Green Bay Packers game. So I like Rodgers, the player, just the matchup. I don't think he's going to have as high of a ceiling as those other guys.
Yeah, and we've seen his floor is really high, so that is still encouraging, which is why I still have my quarterback 8, which is only 1 spot lower than consensus. I agree the matchup is tough, but Indianapolis last week was an even tougher matchup, and this one is at home when I believe last week was on the road. I can't actually remember off the top of my head, but Aaron Rodgers played fine in that game. I think he had like 22 fantasy points or something like that. So if that's his floor against Indianapolis, who is actually a better defense than Chicago, I'm still 100% willing to start him, but I do agree he does see a downtick, and he would be in that like top tier of quarterbacks had he had a good matchup this week.
Like the defense itself for Indy is very good. The reason also that contributed to his points last week was the fact that Indianapolis was putting up a ton of points on the other end.
Yeah, which probably won't happen for the Bears. And Aaron Jones could always run in a couple touchdowns too and take away from Aaron Rodgers.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So another guy that I have no more guys that I am higher on. One guy that I am lower on, I believe you're lower on him as well, is Big Ben Roethlisberger. I have him. The reason is there's a number of reasons. For one, it's a horrible matchup. The Baltimore Ravens are very good against opposing quarterbacks. The Steelers' pass defense is good, but it's not an elite pass offense is good, but it's not an elite passing offense that's like matchup proof or anything like that. It is an offense that you need to have a good matchup for, which we saw last week against Jacksonville. They all kind of smashed all 3 receivers and Ben Roethlisberger and all that kind of stuff. But this is a horrible matchup. And on top of that, this game is on Tuesday, and to me, it just feels risky to me to wait until Tuesday to start anyone from this game, but especially Big Ben when there's so many other options that you could be starting. I honestly would just pivot away from Big Ben this week.
Oh brother, it was ridiculous. So obviously with the news, we're recording this after the COVID-19 case for Lamar Jackson. He's not playing in this game whatsoever. No matter what happens, he just can't play because he got tested for, I believe, yesterday, positive test, and there's at least
J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram do have a chance to play, just for the record. If they were asymptomatic, they tested positive on Monday, which likely means they were actually tested on Sunday. And it's only a 5-day thing, and you need 2 negative tests in a row to actually play the game. So J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram could play in this game. Again, for anyone in this game that's a fringe level player, which unfortunately there's not a lot of them, like the 3 Steelers receivers and Mark Andrews and J.K. Dobbins if he plays, and
Gus Edwards if he doesn't,
and Gus Edwards, those guys are they're pretty solid options. So you might have to wait on those guys, but a guy like Ben Roethlisberger or Eric Ebron, who are kind of maybe fringe options, I'm willing to pivot away from if I can.
For sure. And I'm quickly going to go through these next 2. The first one I'm going to mention, I'm 6 spots higher on than consensus. That's going to be Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback from the Carolina Panthers. I mean, this guy's just been really consistent across the last 7 games he's played in. He's had 19 plus fantasy points in 5 of the last 7, prior to obviously he missed last week with an injury. And he's giving you a decent floor with his actual rushing production. I mean, across those last 7 games, he's given you 4.82 rushing yards per game added on the ground. So even if he doesn't have a huge day throwing the ball, expecting roughly 5 points from the ground game is very encouraging for your quarterback. He's been the quarterback 9 actually in that stretch, which it was surprising when I saw that. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater, you just don't really expect him to be a huge fantasy football quarterback, but he's been a really good option across these last 7 games. And the matchup is fine. It's not fantastic, but it's not going to hinder him. Again, Minnesota gives up the 13th most points per game to the quarterback position, and the game over under is at 51. So, I mean, I really trust Bridgewater as a high-end quarterback too, basically what he's been all season. And the fact that I have him at 15, consensus has him at 21. I just think that consensus ECR is really too low on him, in my opinion.
I have him at 22. So
really?
I'm kind of with ECR on this one. The reason I'm with them is, 1, there's a lot of good options. 2, Teddy Bridgewater is coming off of an injury, which, I mean, I don't really know how much stock I put into it. I'll probably move him up after this. I'll probably move him ahead of Jared Goff and Ben Roethlisberger, to be honest. But I don't think I'm as high as you are on him. I'll probably end up having him at 19 or 18. I think he's a solid option, but I would rather play a guy like Daniel Jones or Baker Mayfield or Kirk Cousins over him.
Oh, I will take any one of those bets.
Really, eh?
Yes. Oh, I was going to talk about Daniel Jones next.
Which one do you want? I'll take Baker. Baker's the one I'm I feel the strongest about. So I'll go Baker versus him.
I'm fine with doing that. And that segues. You mentioned you'd rather Daniel Jones. I have Daniel Jones as a guy I'm 3 spots lower on. I mean, I mentioned 19 plus points in 5 of his last 7 games for Teddy Bridgewater. Guess how many times Daniel Jones has done that over the season, getting 19 points in a game?
I don't know, probably a decent amount of times. He's got a pretty solid rushing floor. 3
games with over 19 points this season. And realistically, in all those games, it's been heavily dependent on his legs. I have it here. 3 of those games. To be
fair, if you look at his schedule that he has played, and we thought it was bad coming into the season, but some of the defenses that we thought were easy defenses earlier in the season ended up being even harder than we thought. If you go to him and Darius Slayton, who I'll talk about in a bit, their schedule, it's all red on Yahoo. It's red, 1 green game, red. It's all the way down. And then there's a couple matchups coming up starting this week that are green, good matchups for those guys. And I expect both him and Darius Slayton and probably Evan Ingram too, and maybe Sterling Shepard to have pretty solid outings going forward.
I mean, I guess that's fair, but even in games against San Francisco, 9 points, Dallas, 8 points, he's had a couple games where you could have said, okay, you know what, the schedule's been bad, but he's got a couple opportunities here or there to really shine. He just really hasn't shown much to me, aside from the games where he's been able to accumulate 70 rushing yards and add to that. So I'm fine with him being a fringe top 20 quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I'm fine with him being 19, 20, 21 type area. But the fact that ECR has him at 15, I just think it's absurd because he's so volatile on a week-to-week basis. And against Cincinnati, a team who just lost their starting quarterback and gives up the 11th most points to opposing running backs, I just think this is more so a game script for a guy like Wayne Gallman, given that this is an incredibly low over-under game and that the Giants are a 6-point favorite on the road. So I just don't think he's going to have a ton of.
I'll take him in a bet too, man. You want to go 2v2? We could go a 2v2 bet. Okay, I'll take Daniel Jones and Baker Mayfield if you want Teddy and someone else.
Teddy and
you want Tannehill?
I have Tannehill lower too. Do you have? Okay. Where do you have Carson Wentz?
Higher
or lower than them?
I have Carson Wentz at 14, so he's higher than both.
Okay, fair. I have him at 14 too. Kirk Cousins?
I'm at 18. I have him lower than both guys.
Okay,
one
so
spot lower than both.
I'll take Cousins and Bridgewater. You'll take Jones and who was the other one?
Mayfield.
Okay, deal.
All right, let's do it. All right, let's run through the last couple quarterbacks here, and then we'll get on to running backs. I have Jared Goff 5 spots lower than consensus, mainly because, I mean, he performed well last week in what was a pretty difficult matchup, but I'm not excited about him in this matchup, though, because this is not an offense that's going to put up a lot of points. Neither one of these teams want to run or want to throw the football a lot. I think both want to protect their quarterbacks and run the ball, probably a low, slow-paced game. Low over under. Like I just don't expect a lot of scoring in this game. I think it's going to be like a 20-13 type score for the Rams or something like that. And the Niners are a well-coached defense. I don't expect them to have like busted coverages like the Bucs had last week and stuff like that. So I'll pass on Goff. I have him as quarterback 21 right now. I'm not really excited about playing him. And Phillip Rivers, the same thing. I have him 5 spots lower than consensus. ECR has him at like 18 or something like that. I'm not on board with that. I know Tennessee isn't the greatest defense in the world, but they've actually gotten quite a bit better since Desmond King came over. And I think Phillip Rivers is just a guy that I don't want to have to rely on anyway.
Oh, I fully agree there with both those guys. The guy I'm going to mention, I was surprised. I guess I have him 5 spots higher than consensus. I don't want to be higher than him on him than consensus. You're going to see it, but Mitch Trubisky, I have 5 spots higher than consensus.
I have to start him in one league because I have it's a super flex league, and I had Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, so I have to start him and Mike Glennon as my quarterbacks. Mitch Trubisky and Mike Glennon this week.
Yeah, and I mean this one having him at 24, I kind of got stuck here because Lamar Jackson got ruled with COVID after the Cowboys game started, and I already had Alex Smith at 25. So I'm like, okay, who's going to show on the screen in this video at 24? Well, it just so happens it has to be Mitch Trubisky now. Pain. But really, to me, what this highlights is there's just such a mosh pit in that quarterback 24 to 32 range. Like after even the top 20 to 22, like you don't want to start anybody in this range, but at least with Mitch Trubisky, you're getting a decent floor because of his rushing. I mean, I don't necessarily know what his ceiling is going to be because he's such an abysmal thrower, but yeah, I have him 5 spot higher, and I don't even know what to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a decent. I honestly, they play Monday, don't they, or Sunday night?
Sunday night, I believe.
Sunday night. I actually don't mind him in as like a contrarian play in a tournament instead of like fade Aaron Rodgers and play Trubisky instead.
Yeah,
I don't mind that. Anyway, let's move on to running backs here since we've been talking about quarterbacks for a bit. You'll see our running back rankings on the screen right now. There's a number of guys that are affected by injury, which is why you see plus 67 for someone like Myles Gaskin on my thing. I'm just kind of throwing him in there in case he plays. I'm not exactly sure whether or not he's going to play, but a guy I am higher on than consensus is Damian Harris. I have him 8 spots higher than consensus. Part of the reason is if you go to PFF, they have a thing that's called like O-line, D-line, like matchups or whatever. And the Patriots O-line has an 84% advantage in run blocking versus the run defense of the Arizona Cardinals. And that's actually better than the Browns O-line versus the Jags D-line, which surprised me because I thought like the Browns O-line is just a lead at run blocking. I thought it was going to be like a huge advantage for them. But Harris in general, he loses Burkhead, obviously, right? That's why he's upgraded because Burkhead tore his ACL. And Michelle is coming back at some point. I'm not exactly sure if he's playing in this game, but even if he is coming back, I think it's an upgrade regardless, because I think Michelle's role should be less than what Burkhead's role was, especially as a receiver. And that's where I think Harris can actually go up in terms of his volume. He hasn't really been getting much receiving volume, but I actually think he will get some now that Rex Burkhead is out. And we already know he's the most talented running back on the team. And he gets all like the goal line work and stuff. So I think Harris going forward for the rest of the season is top 20 running back.
Yeah, no, I agree. I believe I have him at the same spot as you. You have him at 16?
Yes.
Yep.
No,
same.
I am at 14.
I have him at 16. Okay, so we're both significantly higher on him. Guy that I'm 3 spots lower on, and this is not due to this guy's talent. I mean, you watch this guy play football. I mean, you're going to see some absolute highlight plays from this guy, and it's just going to happen with owning this guy. But I'm going to talk about Miles Sanders. I have him 3 spots lower than consensus, and I mean, I want to love him so bad. The sheer explosiveness, the natural ability in the open field. Like, this guy's a human highlight reel. He's averaging 5.7 yards per carry right now. But to me, he's just so big play dependent. And he's more so a low-end RB1 as opposed to, like, the sturdy volume middle RB1s. Like, even, like, James Robinson, I would prefer over him simply because I can feel safer with the volume that you're getting there.
I disagree with that. I would take Miles Sanders over James Robinson.
Fair. Okay.
With Mike Glennon as the starting quarterback and all that kind of stuff. Like,
I'm
it's
thinking,
not ideal for either guy because Miles Sanders just lost Lane Johnson for the rest of the year as well, which isn't good. But I mean, he's been dealing with O-line injuries all year, and he's been like just fine anytime he's been on the field. He's been like the definition of bad luck. Every time he like gets in there, he gets like touchdowns called back or like fumbles at the 2-yard line, and JJ Arcega-Whiteside picks it up in the end zone. Like,
I mean, I'm also looking at this matchup against the Seahawks, and they're just as pass funneled a defense as you can be. I mean, they give up the most opposing points to wide receivers and the second most points to the opposing quarterbacks. And they're also 5-point home underdogs, indicating that on a neutral field, this would be an 8-point Seahawks advantage, if you will. So, I mean, I just think this game can get out of hand early for Sanders. Now, if you're talking about he could get receptions, maybe they're trying to come back, yada, 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 I guess. But, I mean, I still like him. I have him at 12, but there's just so many other options that I would prefer over him. Again, a guy like Kareem Hunt, I like over him. I had Antonio Gibson ranked higher. Good thing because that guy absolutely shredded. And unfortunately, I had Ezekiel Elliott kind of pegged him at 9, but I don't want to talk about that one.
Yeah,
we don't need to bring that up again.
No, we don't need to bring that up. I'm so glad I faded Zeke in my DFS lineup. So I was like, I cashed out in all of them because I didn't have Zeke in any of them. So that was nice.
I'm going to cash out on that division bet now.
Yeah, facts. One guy that, I mean, we talk about every single week, I'm going to talk about him now, is Ronald Jones, and subsequently I have Leonard Fournette lower as usual. Ronald Jones, I have 8 spots higher than consensus. What I've noticed about Ronald Jones is that he has been much, much, much better in good run matchups versus bad run matchups. If you think of the games that he's been the worst in, games where he got benched or and what happens a lot of the time is that Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians, they abandon the run game when they get down. Against the Giants, against the Saints both times, against the Rams last week. They just abandon the run game when the game is like, even when it's within like 7 points, like they'll still just abandon the run game, and it's ridiculous. Anyway, if you'll see, I'll have Danny put this on the screen for you guys, but I have the splits when he's playing a top 12 run defenses versus when he's playing a bottom, like whatever, 2/3 of the league run defense. And you can see the carries there is the big deal. He has 16.57 carries per game in favorable matchups compared to 9.25 in non-favorable matchups because they abandon the run game. And not only that, but all of his touchdowns have come in good matchups. And he actually gets a bit more of a target increase. Obviously, he's probably not going to catch a lot of them because he's Ronald Jones, but he's just much better. He's able to hold on to the starting running back job. He's able to get a lot of decent carries and all that kind of stuff. And this is a game where there's going to be a lot of scoring. He has a good chance at a touchdown, and the Chiefs are very, very susceptible to running backs. They've been a run funnel defense for a couple years now. And I don't expect this week to be any different, even though I do expect just the offense, both offenses in general, to just go off, running, passing, whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to mention Mike Davis next. I actually am 4 spots lower than consensus. And I mean, he just hasn't really been the same guy in his last 5 starts as opposed to his first 4 starts. As I'll make reference to, obviously, he had 7.82 half PPR points per game in the last 5 games. And if you actually see his overall passing game utilization in those splits, I mean, he went from 33 targets and 30 receptions from weeks 2 to 6, or on average per game, 8.25 targets per game and 7.5 receptions per game, till these last 5 games, he's averaged 3.83 targets and 3.1 receptions per game. So is a huge decline there. And ultimately, it's basically half his half PPR points per game, going from 15.15 to 7.82. So although, again, over that 4-game stretch, you really want to keep him in that top 10 area because he was playing like that. We just got to adjust to the fact that he hasn't been the same guy these last 5 weeks. As a result, we should have him more so as the high-end RB2 type range. I still like him. Again, this matchup is fine for him especially, but we just got to tone our expectations. He's not that guy at the beginning of the season who, he's not, that offense not missing a beat. Mike Davis is basically Christian McCaffrey in the receiving game. He has not been that same player these last 5 games. Basically, across the board, his numbers have been.
Yeah, I mean, like I agree with you, but I have Mike Davis right at consensus. I think the matchup warrants it. And if you look back at his bad games, they've been against like the Bears and the Bucks, like bad run defenses that you don't want any part of, and people should have tempered their expectations for him in those games.
My main concern in those games is the
volume, and especially the receiving volume,
the target output.
Yeah, for sure. And Gus Edwards is a guy I'm going to talk about right now. I've already talked about him before, so I'll kind of just brush over him real quick. I have him 8 spots higher than consensus. I have him ahead of guys like Chris Carson, James Conner, Gio Bernard, Miles Gaskin, Kenyon Drake. I have him really high, basically. And the reason is because he's alone in this backfield. With Dobbins and Ingram potentially out with COVID in this game, as well as Lamar, I think Edwards is just going to get elite volume, and this kind of differentiates him from someone like Duke Johnson, who gets elite volume and isn't good. Yeah. Because Edwards is actually a good running back, and I expect him to get borderline 25 to 30 touches in this game if he's alone in this backfield. I'm probably going to lower him after this because I think we should temper expectations for whether or not this game actually happens. 2, he's also missing his quarterback in this game too, so I should probably lower him just for that sake of things. But I do think if Dobbins and Ingram are out, and I think we'll know that by Sunday, whether they're going to be out or not, then I think he's a top 20 play.
Yeah, no, I agree. Next guy I'm going to mention, I'm 5 spots higher on. I'm going to mention Giovanni Bernard of the Cincinnati Bengals. And to me, this is just a critical bounce back game for him. I mean, he's averaged 15.25 touches per game and 5.25 targets per game in Mixon's absence. I get the main detractor for him on ECR happens to be the news of the season-ending injury to Joe Burrow. And that ultimately, it's going to sting his ceiling, absolutely. But this is still a back that gets a ton of opportunity against a New York Giants run defense that has actually given up the 9th most points at the running back position compared to in his last 2 games where he's kind of let you down. Pittsburgh, the 2nd stingiest, and Washington football team, the 9th stingiest. I just think this is a primed matchup for him to really give you that RB2 type output that we were used to seeing from him prior to this 2-week stretch of kind of stinky play, if you will.
Yeah, and we saw against Tennessee, who was a favorable matchup the last time he played like a bad run defense. He had 21 PPR points or half PPR points. So he was quite good in that stretch. And I think obviously you have to downgrade him because Joe Burrow makes this offense a lot better. But I do think he is still a back end RB2, like mid end RB2 in a good matchup where I have him. I think I have him at like 19 or whatever. Yeah. And as far as his concussion goes, Zach Taylor came out and said today that he expects him to play, basically. So we're going to just operate under the assumption that he's going to play in this game. One guy I want to brush over real quick because we don't 100% know if he's going to play. I honestly have no idea if he's going to play or not. I might look this up as I'm doing this, but Raheem Mostert, if he plays, I have 8 spots higher than consensus. He's RB8 in points per game on the season when he's played. I know it's only a 4-game sample size, but he is a big play threat at any moment. He can break a huge one. He's the fastest running back in the NFL. And he has a nose for the end zone too. If you bought low / like stashed him these past couple weeks that he has been out, he is about to come through for you because he's the only running back in that backfield right now that deserves to get the full workload. Every one of those other guys has proven to be injury prone or not that effective with the carries in the case of Jerick McKinnon or whatever the case is. When Raheem Mostert has been in that backfield, he has been the workhorse running back. And if he comes back this week or next, I expect him to resume being like a top 15 running back.
Yeah, I agree there. I'm going to talk about next Brian Hill, who's 19 spots ahead of consensus, but this mostly has to do with the fact that I don't think consensus has adjusted to the news that Todd Gurley.
They probably haven't. If for those of you that don't know, Todd Gurley was actually ruled out with, is it a knee injury that he has?
Knee injury, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I mean, of course it is for Todd Gurley because he has arthritis in his knees. So. Yeah. Not good news. If you didn't sell Todd Gurley low like I told you to in week 9, or sell Todd Gurley high like I told you to in week 9, I mean, you might be in for a rough stretch here because if Todd Gurley is the one who got you to the fantasy playoffs, and he likely did, I'll admit I was wrong about that. He was good for the first like 8, 9, 10 weeks of the season, but I think his luck is running out. His touchdown luck is running out. I think he's going to be bad the rest of the season.
Fantasy.
He's banged up.
Make sure you recognize that fantasy good. Also, worth noting about Todd Gurley's value, his game this week against the Raiders would have been by far the best game left for him on the schedule.
Oh, yeah, dude. This is the only good game left.
Yeah, it's just insane. Well, let me actually talk about it in terms of Brian Hill's outlook because, again, with Todd Gurley scheduled to miss this game, this is just a...
Doesn't he have a bye next week, too?
13.
Or I think so. Do they have a 13 bye, too?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think they do, actually.
They must have... No, they had their bye 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, week 10. This game, to me, for Brian Hill, it's just too good of a matchup, too good of an outlook type of game to realistically – I don't know. I feel like he's fool's gold this week, but you have to give him the credit he deserves because this is the 4th worst defense against opposing running backs in fantasy football.
Where do you have Brian Hill? Like what number?
28, I believe.
I'm at 28 as well. Who do you have? Like who are the people 3 behind him?
3 behind him? Let me check. Gore, Balaj, McKissick.
I have McKissick, Balaj, and Lindsey right behind him.
There you go. But yeah, talking about him, I mean, the Las Vegas Raiders obviously are the fourth worst team against opposing running backs, and this is the game that's scheduled to be the second highest over/under of the week. So, like, I don't think Brian Hill's a good running back, but like as Gurley's done all year to be a top 12 running back, if Brian Hill could just fall face first into the end zone on a high over/under,
he can catch some balls too.
Like I want to rank him higher, but he stung me in the past, and he's not a very good player. That I can't.
Yeah, no, I'm not excited about playing him either. That's why I have him like just inside the top 30. If I knew he was going to get the full workload, I'd probably rank him like top 25
for sure. And the reason also why I even have him here as opposed to Ito Smith is that working or operating behind Todd Gurley this season, Brian Hill has actually out-touched Ito Smith by a 76-20 discrepancy. So we've seen that Brian Hill's been the one operating behind Todd Gurley. So hopefully that's the case on Sunday, because otherwise I will be burnt in the butt because I really have to play Brian Hill this week, unfortunately, because I had DJ Chark.
Yeah, I also have DJ Chark, so I can feel your pain there.
Yep.
All right, so let's knock out a couple more running backs real quick, and then we'll jump right into receivers. So let's go. I'm going to go rapid fire on the guys that I have lower. James Conner, he has a bad matchup this week, and he's not even been reliable in good matchups. He had last week he was good against Jacksonville, but he had Dallas and Cincinnati the 2 weeks before that, and he wasn't good. So I'm quite a bit lower on James Conner, and as I mentioned, with this game being on Tuesday now, it makes it more risky. So I'm just lower on everyone in that game just for the risk factor. I'm actually playing Jonnu Smith over Mark Andrews in one league because I don't want to risk it with Mark Andrews. Yeah, like I just would rather.
And worst case, you can always flex Mark Andrews.
It's a game where I just had Deshaun Watson play, and he had Brandon Cooks and Tony Pollard. So like I'm way up on the guy already, right? So, Kalen Balaj, what?
Someone else in my league started Pollard too. Why are people starting Pollard?
I have no idea. His team is really bad though. So I mean, he's like in 11th place right now.
Same with the guy in my league. I think he's 3-8. So
yeah. So Kalen Balaj, he's just dog shit. I have him 13 spots lower than consensus. He's actually unadulterated dog shit at football. Like I don't care if he gets volume. I actually don't. And Eckler might be back too. That's the other part of this. If Eckler is back, I'll rank Balaj in the 90s where he belongs. Nyheim Hines, another guy who's not that good. How did 6 carries for 2 yards work out last week? Like just if anyone wants to shed light on me that played Nyheim Hines thinking he was going to be an RB2 last week, and he's ranked like RB27 in consensus again. Like I don't understand this. Just because he went off against the Titans the first time doesn't mean it's happening again. The reason it happened the first time is because it was Thursday Night Football.
Dude, why do people like Nyheim Hines so much?
I don't know.
He's literally a scat back. What scat backs do is they're garbage, they're garbage, then they have a blow up. They're garbage, and they have a blow up. That is Nyheim Hines.
For a guy like Frank Reich, who's a big time like hot hand type of coach too. If like Nyheim Hines is like if you could bet guys live, like fantasy points wise, like that would be the perfect time to buy Nyheim Hines. If he has a good first quarter, that's when you buy him.
For sure. Like again, you mentioned. I have Nyheim Hines at, where is he right here? I think I can't even see him. He's at 45 for me. I have him 17 spots lower.
I have him 8 spots lower, and I thought I was low on him.
Yeah, I don't see it at all. Like, I don't know. To be fair, I might have to raise him a couple spots because.
Oh yeah, you probably will. And it's not even like I'm a huge Jonathan Taylor stan. It's not like I'm like, oh yeah, Jonathan Taylor's like the RB1 in this offense now. I just don't think Nyheim Hines is good. I don't think he has a great role, and I don't think there's any chance you're going to know when to start the guy. So there's no point of even trying to play him.
Fully agree. Let's get into the next position because you basically already talked about Balaj for me. I'll start off with the receivers, and I'm going to quickly start this one off with a guy that we both have lower. I think you have him lower than I do. I think you have him 9 spots lower, Robert Woods? I have him
I have. I already talked about this game with Jared Goff. I think this is just going to be a slow-paced slugfest. Like between two teams that are sound on defense and don't trust their quarterbacks. Despite recent trends for the Rams, they've been throwing the ball a little bit more. They're still a run-based offense. And in this game, I think with the running backs all healthy now, with Henderson Akers and Malcolm Brown all back, I think they're just going to try and run the ball in this game. Jared Goff might have like a somewhat efficient day or whatever, but San Francisco is not going to play the soft zone coverage that the Bucks were playing against them for whatever reason. I don't know why the Bucks are doing it, but that's what they're doing. And it just allowed Cooper Kupp to Robert Woods to just catch a shit ton of balls. And on top of that, the Bucks absolutely stymied their run game and forced them to throw the ball. And I think San Francisco, while they're a good run defense, is a little bit more susceptible to the run than Tampa is.
Yeah, fully. And I was going to mention with Robert Woods, look at the actual differential. Like, obviously, this is going to make a difference in how many times Jared Goff throws the ball. But in Jared Goff's 2 games, he's had 51 and 61 passing attempts against Tampa Bay and Miami. Ironically, the 2 Florida teams. In those 2 games, Robert Woods averages 24.75 half PPR points per game. And every other game this year, he averages 11.08. The reason being, in those 2 games, he passed for a combined 112 attempts.
Yeah, which is what we thought we were getting out of Jared Goff coming into the year. But I don't think that's going to continue.
In the other 8 games, he averages 32.5 attempts per game. So those are 2 clear, huge outliers in his schedule. And that has inflated Robert Woods and Jared Goff's numbers because of those 2 outliers. When in reality, I mean, again, you take away those 2 games, it's 32.5 attempts per game. When you add them, just a 2-game sample size out of 10 total games, that number jumps to 37.2. So, like, if you know how averages work,
these guys, both Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods have been guys that we're like, man, we were kind of wrong about them. Like going into these previous 2 games, because the Rams offense just doesn't throw the ball that much, and they weren't getting the volume that we wanted them to get, that we thought they were going to get coming into the year, and they ended up being more of a run-heavy offense. And Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, as a result, were like low-end wide receiver 2s and not the like back-end wide receiver 1, mid wide receiver 1s that we thought we were getting when we drafted them.
For sure. Yeah, no, I fully agree. I just want to mention Robert Woods because we both had him. Who's your first guy that you have here?
Yeah, so I'll breeze through this guy because I've talked about him on another podcast as well as a podcast of my Start Sit show. So Godwin is a guy I have higher than consensus. I have him 8 spots higher. He has the best matchup on the field in terms of cornerback matchups. I already talked about this. He plays against Tyrann Mathieu. And according to PFF, in the last 5 weeks, Tyrann Mathieu has allowed 22 targets, 18 catches, which is, I don't have to tell you, super high completion percentage, 190 yards, a touchdown, despite playing against Buffalo, Denver, the Jets, Carolina, and Vegas. And none of those teams have a great slot receiver. The best one of that bunch probably being Jerry Jeudy, and Tyrann Mathieu predominantly playing in the slot. I think Chris Godwin is just going to wipe the floor with him. He has not been nearly the same player in the nickel position. He's better when he's out at safety than he is against slot receivers, especially one like Chris Godwin.
Now, this is the curious part that I have this week. I also have Chris Godwin again 5 spots higher, but with the return of L'Jarius Sneed, I'm interested to see how Kansas City uses their personnel on the back end, because those first 3 weeks, I mean, L'Jarius Sneed was one of the highest graded corners in PFF, and he predominantly ran from the nickel. So I want to see if they adjust their defense. Maybe they play Sneed on the outside with Travarius Ward and let Matthew still run in the slot, or if they move Matthew back and let L'Jarius Sneed just dominate in the slot again. I'm curious to see. But regardless, even if L'Jarius Sneed's starting, I get it. He's a good performing rookie cornerback, but we're still talking about Chris fucking Godwin.
And Chris Godwin, like it's been overlooked because he's been hurt and all that kind of stuff, but he's looked the same as he did last year. Like he still looks just as good as he did last year. And as of the 3 Bucks receivers, he's playing the best. And not only that, but we've seen his ability to break tackles and dunk on guys and score touchdowns. Like he just makes things happen once he gets the ball in his hands. And the presence of Antonio Brown is really helping someone like him because he has no attention in the slot, basically, like none, because everyone's worried about Evans and Brown.
For sure. Next guy I'm going to mention is going to be 4 spots lower than consensus. I'm going to be talking about Allen Robinson, wide receiver from the Chicago Bears. And Jair Alexander is returning from injury. You got the injury to Nick Foles. And then again, as I mentioned with Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be a sluggish divisional matchup. Even if, like, I don't think PFF actually projected Jair Alexander to be on him, which doesn't really make sense to me because on Allen Robinson.
Yeah, he's shadowing him. Yeah.
Okay, do that. Because when
they don't have him as the primary defender, but Ian Hartz tweets out the shadow matchups every week, and he did say Alexander's going to shadow him.
Okay. I was about to say, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes they don't have the primary defenders aligned with like the shadow matchups. It's really weird. I don't know why they do that.
For sure. But either way, he's going up against Jair Alexander. I was going to say, regardless of what's actually listed, it's just going to happen. And if that's the case, I mean, Jair Alexander, prior to that injury, was playing like the best corner in the NFL. I've said multiple times on this show. And although I really like Allen Robinson, I'm just going to take wide receiver 2s with higher ceiling in that range. And dropping him to wide receiver 20, I think is very fine because, again, this is still a high floor type player. Regardless.
He's a high floor type player, but I wouldn't expect much more than like 7 for 65 at Allen Robinson. Absolutely. And even that is probably going to be difficult to get against Alexander because if he gets 7 for 65 against Alexander, you could bet your ass he earned every one of those yards.
Oh, absolutely. And again, you're talking about guys after him that I'd prefer according to ECR. So Brandon Cooks, I liked a lot more. He already played. Chris Godwin, we already mentioned him. Deontay Johnson. Who is it? Oh, DJ Moore. Like I would just prefer. Actually, no, DJ Moore I have a little lower. Either way, those are all guys I think have higher ceilings than what Allen Robinson's going to produce in this game. So, take it away with your next guy, and then I'll get through these.
Yeah, this is a huge difference for me. I have Jamison Crowder 21 spots higher than consensus, and I was not a guy that was 17. High on him. How much you have?
I have him 17. So
okay, yeah. So here's the big thing. Number one, I probably would have been higher on Jamison Crowder regardless of Joe Flacco playing or not. But Sam Darnold's back now, and we know how much Sam Darnold loves his slot receiver. And not only that, but Adam Gase loves his slot receiver. And Adam Gase in his post-game presser was pissed that Jamison Crowder didn't get the ball more. And he basically said,
that's
like,
Adam Gase thing
I know, right? It's literally like all he can do is feed a slot receiver. It would actually be very helpful if Adam Gase had someone like Juju Smith-Schuster on his team that was like a slot receiver actually worthy of feeding. But either way, Jamison Crowder is going to get the ball in this game. You can bet your ass he's going to get the ball, whether it's Adam Gase, whether it's Sam Darnold. I don't care. I expect him to get 10, 12, 13, 14 targets in this game. I expect him to get absolutely peppered, and that's why I have him way higher than consensus. He's had 2 bad games in a row, but I expect that mostly to be part of the quarterback play as well as the just the flow of the game and all that kind of stuff. Some receivers are just going to have dud games. It's just the way it goes. Yeah. I think Jamison Crowder is going to bounce back in a big way this week.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I mentioned I have him as well, 17 spots higher.
I have every DFS lineup.
The next pairing, if you will, I'm going to mention is I have T. Higgins 5 spots higher than consensus and Tyler Boyd 5 spots lower. And I understand why ECR has these 2 flipped in the pecking order. I just would still prefer Higgins straight up over Boyd for a flex option. That's obviously where they're going to be valued now with the unfortunate news of Joe Burrow. You're talking about these guys at one point were wide receiver 2-3s consistently producing guys you can count on. Without Joe Burrow, their ceilings are just capped, in my opinion. But out of these 2 options, straight up, I would just prefer Higgins. Again, this is a guy before the stinker against the Washington football team pass defense that has been the best against opposing wide receivers in the NFL thus far. This is a kid who had 60-plus yards in 6 straight games. And until he really proves otherwise, I'm still going to be treating him like the number 1 wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, regardless of who's under center. So if he comes out, has a dud, Tyler Boyd's clearly the guy for Ryan Finley, then I can adjust accordingly. But until that happens, I'm just going to go under the assumption that T. Higgins is still the main receiver out of the bunch here.
Yeah, and we've seen with a number of other rookie receivers. We saw it with Terry McLaurin last year. We see it with Brandon Ayuk this year. The quarterback changes have really not affected their value too much.
Okay, not affected value. I thought you were going to say.
Obviously, it is. I would probably say this is a bigger downgrade than what we're seeing because Burrow was playing like, I don't know, probably top 18 quarterback in the NFL as a rookie, which is very impressive. And I think Brandon Allen is capable. I don't think he's a terrible quarterback, but I also don't think he's great either. We saw him actually feed Cortland Sutton quite a bit last year when he played for the Broncos in the 3 games that he played for him. I believe he targeted Sutton 8 times in all 3 games. So I think Higgins with James Bradbury likely to shadow AJ Green in this game is set up for a great matchup. And I honestly I want to bet on a talented player like T. Higgins to persevere despite the unfortunate situation with his quarterback. A couple guys I just want to run through real quick because I've already talked about them is Darius Slayton. I have 5 spots higher than consensus. Pretty much copy and paste exactly what I said for Daniel Jones. Pittsburgh, Dallas, and Philly are the 3 games that Darius Slayton had good fantasy outings in. He's only had 3 really good games this season, but those 3 games are the 3 best matchups he's had. So we've kind of seen his ability to perform in good matchups and kind of disappoint in the more difficult ones. So over the next 4 weeks, he gets Cincinnati, Seattle, Arizona, and Cleveland. So those 4 games could be really good for Darius Slayton. If he's on your waiver wire, I think he's a guy that you can flex, because he could be on your waiver wire. He hasn't been very good this season. I think he could win some people some leagues, similar to the way Brashad Perriman did last year. And then Jarvis Landry, I already talked about him. better weather. We haven't really seen his target share without Odell Beckham in a good weather game, and I think we're going to see that this week. And then Laviska Shenault is the last guy I wanted to talk about. DJ Chark is out, and Chris Conley is out as well. So Laviska Shenault is a guy that I have inside my top 45, and I'd be willing to flex him if you need someone.
Yeah, for sure. The three guys I'm going to quickly mention before we go into tight ends. Travis Fulgham, I have 9 spots higher than consensus, and I get it. I mean, this has been a really rough couple of weeks. Starting Travis Fulgham in these last 2 games versus the output he's given you has just been completely abysmal. I understand that. 1 catch for 8 yards in both those games, but I'm still willing to give him the redeeming opportunity against the worst team against opposing wide receivers in the Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football. If he proves redundant again this week, I'll admit defeat on this one and tank his rank. But because of how good he was prior to that 2-game stretch, I'm willing to give him a second chance in proving that he's still a good wide receiver, because on film, he's looked like a very talented receiver for whatever reason. Like, I did not expect him to look as good as he did. It's just been a rough couple games for him. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I'm like, here, where do you stand on this? Because I have no idea what to think of like the Eagles receiving core going forward. Do they need to invest in it? Do they not need, I think if they were to invest in it, I think the best policy for them to do is go get Juju Smith-Schuster or Allen Robinson or Chris Godwin in free agency and not.
They don't have the cap to do that, though. Or they don't have the cap. They're $30 million in the hole.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they don't really have the space to do any of that stuff.
I could see them, like, if they want a receiver in the draft, the guy that I probably would suggest the most for them would probably be like a Devonta Smith.
Devonta Smith makes the most sense to me. I think Bateman makes a lot of sense too. Yeah. I don't think a guy like Waddle really fits with Reagor and Fulgham there already. I think a slot target hog would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, a guy who has polish, a guy who can run good routes, and a guy who
Devonta Smith, you don't have to worry about him having a heart. I think Devonta Smith is going to be one of the easiest transitions to the NFL, similar to what we saw from Jefferson this year.
Yeah, like he fits in any system. While I prefer Waddle, I have Waddle as my wide receiver 1. Waddle's a lot more scheme dependent. Whereas Devonta Smith, you could put him into your system. He could be at minimum your wide receiver 2 right away, and you don't have to worry about that guy.
I know the Chargers need O-line, but can we please get Jalen Waddle with Justin Herbert? Can we please get Jalen Waddle with Justin Herbert?
I'd not.
That'd be such an elite combo. Same with Cincinnati too. If Cincinnati were to take Jalen Waddle, I think that's a great fit as well. But they need O-line too. So
yeah, they also first of all, if they pick top 3, they're going to take Penei Sewell.
There's a lot of buzz about the Northwestern kid too, man.
Yeah. Oh,
Jeremiah just said he's his OT1.
Yeah. Offensive line 1 actually, because
offensive line 1 too. Yeah, ahead of Davis.
Yeah. Davis, Elijah Vera Tucker. And
this tackle class is not bad.
It's pretty good. No, definitely.
There's a number of back end of the first round guys, which is exciting for me because I think that's 1 where Tampa's going to pick, and 2, I want a guy that we can put at right tackle because I think they're going to kick Wirfs to left next year.
Is Donovan Smith gone?
Donovan Smith has no dead money after this year.
Interesting.
So, and he makes $15.5 million a year. So I think what they're probably, and we're cap strapped because we have to pay Barrett, Godwin, and David. So what I think they're going to do is cut Donovan Smith, move Wirfs to left tackle, and draft a right tackle at the back of the first is what I think they're going to do.
I'm going to quickly mention these last 2 guys prior. Going into the tight end rankings. But if you guys have made it this far in the video, you've enjoyed the content so far, you're interested to see what we have in store for the rest of this season, what's going on in the off season in general, make sure you smash that like button and hit the subscribe button. Again, the ratio of views to non-subscribed people versus subscribed people is pretty astounding when we still think about it. So again, it doesn't hurt.
And the ratio of views to likes is always big too. Big difference. Yeah, so let's try and I know it's annoying when YouTubers and people on YouTube are just like, hey, can you like my video? But it really, really does help us out. Sure. The more likes we get, the more YouTube recommends our content. And we like to think we do a good job here, and we believe in our ability to actually produce quality content. So when people see our content, we're going to be like, hey, these guys are pretty cool. I'll subscribe to them. And that helps us grow. So we appreciate you guys, any of you that leave comments, any of you that like the video, and any of you that are already subscribed and have the bell icon on.
For sure. And again, as well with the subscription button, you guys can subscribe if you're enjoying the content so far. And if at any point you're like, oh, you know what, I don't like them anymore whatsoever, you can always unsubscribe. That's fine. Just by subscribing initially, you're enjoying the content, you give us a chance, And if you continue enjoying the content, heck, you're not going to be mad at yourself for doing so whatsoever. So it's really a win-win on your part. But anyways, 49 minutes into the video.
We'll run through the tight ends really fast.
Because I have two more receivers. I'm going to quickly.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Curtis Samuel, wide receiver, 32 ECR. I just have to adjust this. Like, can we stop pumping this guy into like high-end wide receiver 3 territory? Like, can we just stop pretending that he just has this ability as a wide receiver to realistically have him in this type of range? I mean, this guy is just the ultimate, like, I don't know, like fucking gadget. Like
he's the third option on the Panthers passing offense. Like it's not like it's not like it's the Cowboys when Dak was there, or the Steelers or the Bucks. Like you need a great passing offense to be able to support 3 receivers. And I just don't think Curtis Samuel is a good enough option. And could Curtis Samuel have a good game and Robbie Anderson disappoint or DJ Moore disappoint? Sure. It's probably going to happen once or twice more this season, but I'm not betting on it to happen every single game.
For sure. And then the last one I'm going to mention, Denzel Mims, I have 5 spots higher. I mean, this is a guy, 7+ targets in 3 of the last 4 games since returning from injury. And now he gets starting quarterback Sam Darnold back. I'm really intrigued to see how this young wide receiver quarterback duo can really mesh down the stretch of the season, because Jets are already out of it. You may as well see what you got with Darnold and see how his chemistry with Denzel Mims can really stand to improve for the rest of the season. So I do have Mims a little bit higher than consensus.
Yep. No worries here. I'll run through some tight ends just because we've talked about them like a million times before, because we see a trend with who ECR likes and who ECR doesn't like. Jonnu Smith, I don't know why ECR hates him so much. Like I honestly don't. He's tight end 13 in ECR. You cannot convince me there's 12 tight ends you'd rather own than Jonnu Smith, especially this week when I know he has a bad matchup this week, but there's a number of guys that have bad matchups at the tight end position. Disrespected as usual. Jonnu Smith only has 3 games this season with less than 8.5 fantasy points. Yet I hear people on big name fantasy podcasts saying that he's so boomer bust. He has 3 games with less than 8.5 fantasy points out of 10. That is a great ratio for tight ends. Tight end, Mark Andrews has more bust games than Jonnu Smith.
Yeah,
and he has a number of big games as well. What more do you want out of a mid tight end 1? He's not going to be Darren Waller. I thought there was a chance he could be earlier on in the season, but he's not going to be at that level. So we just have to accept the fact that Jonnu Smith is in that tier 2 of tight ends with a guy like TJ Hawkinson and Mark Andrews. And that's where I think he belongs. And no one's giving him the respect like that.
Absolutely. The guy I'm going to mention who actually Jonnu's been more consistent on that regard than this season, yet people just want to peg this guy as the quote unquote model of consistency.
Yeah, he's a safe tight end.
Can we fuck off with this Hunter Henry stability? Like ECR really didn't think that they could just sneak this guy into the top 5 and like I wouldn't notice, right? Like this is the same Hunter Henry who hasn't crossed, get this, he hasn't crossed 50 receiving yards in a game since week 4. Since week 4, he hasn't had more than 50 receiving yards. Like if that's your tight end 1, go have him. I don't give a fuck at that point. If you want to rank him at tight end 5, that's on you. I guess scoring 2 of his 3 total touchdowns on the year in back-to-back weeks makes people think this guy's actually good. Like 66.7% of his total touchdowns on the season happened in these last 2 weeks.
To be fair, there is a good chance he scores again this week just because it's a high-scoring matchup, but I get your point. Hunter Henry, as I mentioned with Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry has not been consistent. He has this huge stigma around him that he's like this safe floor guy, but he's had 5 games with less than 8 points, whereas Jonnu has had 3 games with less than 8 points. And 4 of those 5 games where Hunter Henry had less than 8 points, he had less than 5 points. So he was really bad in those games. And again, yet ECR is 5 and Jonnu's at 13. Like I don't get it.
It's just unreal. And
they should be flip-flopped, literally. They should literally be flip-flopped.
Definitely. I'm going to actually quickly segue this into a guy who's ranked behind Hunter Henry, but this is just such a bounce back type game for a guy in Rob Gronkowski. I currently have him at 6. His ECR is at 9. This is the game scheduled to be the highest over under of the entire slate. Yet somehow, according to ECR, he's 4 spots lower than Hunter Henry. I mean, Gronk's 2 for 25 showing against the Rams. It's considered a bust game for Gronk. I mean, 2 for 25 is not good whatsoever. But if we're pretending like Hunter Henry's 4 for 30 and basically half his games this year is realistically going to give you much better, then I don't know what to tell you. Because Gronk's floor is basically what Hunter Henry's value has been all season. yet people want to rank Gronk behind him. It just doesn't make any tangible sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. If you go to PFF does tight end matchups too, and it shows who the primary defender is going to be. Here's who are the top 5 tight end matchups this week in terms of advantages. So Travis Kelce, and this doesn't shock me at all, has a 73% advantage over Devin White, which, I mean, yeah, obviously Travis Kelce is going to go nuts this week. Number 2 is Rob Gronkowski, 53% advantage over Anthony Hitchens, who has a 54.7 coverage grade, which is still 20 points better than Devin White. Anyway, Kyle Rudolph, who I have 11 spots higher than consensus, and I will segue into right now, has a 33% advantage over Shaq Thompson this week. And I think with Adam Thielen most likely out for this game, we don't actually have official word that he's out, but we're pretty sure he's going to be out for this game. He's listed as doubtful. Kyle Rudolph with no Irv Smith, also listed as doubtful in this game, should be a pretty solid option. We saw him get 6 or 7 targets last game that Irv Smith was out. And I think he has a decent chance to get into the end zone, which should be a high-scoring game for the Vikings side of things. And just for the record, number 4 on that list of tight end advantage was TJ Hawkinson. And we saw how he did. So
he did well.
Yeah. And then another guy I just want to mention real quick at the tight end position is Jared Cook. I have 7 spots higher than consensus. And I mean, Jared Cook is not a safe option by any means. I understand that. He dropped like 1 point last week against the Falcons. But what tight end in this range is? Like, honestly, like at tight end 15, tight end 14, where I have him ranked, I have him over Mike Gesicki. And Mike Gesicki's like dropped like 2 donuts this season. Like, yeah. He's a less talented version of Jared Cook, and he's in a worse offense too. So I'll take Jared Cook as still a top 15 tight end. I don't think he's a great option, but if you have to stream the position, he might even be available on your waiver wire, and you can go pick him up and put him in your lineup.
For sure. Last 2 guys I'm going to mention. First of all, Eric Ebron, 4 spots higher than consensus. I have him at 7. ECR's at 11. He's basically just been a better Hunter Henry. I know, like similar to what we mentioned with Jonnu Smith being a better Hunter Henry. Eric Ebron's been a better
Eric Ebron has been what people think Hunter Henry has been.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he scored in 3 of his last 4 games, and then also faces a matchup in the Baltimore Ravens that presents a very solid cornerback trio while holding their passing game weakness really being against opposing tight ends. Again, they concede like league average type points to tight end position, while they're the 3rd stingiest against opposing receivers. So if there's any area for the Pittsburgh offense to really exploit their passing game, it's going to be to Ebron in the middle of the field because of how strong those Baltimore corners are going to be on that talented trio that Pittsburgh offers. So I really think that Ebron as well is going to have a really good chance to score in this game. Because again, as I've mentioned, Baltimore's super stingy against the receiver position. And as we've seen, they've really been rock solid against opposing running backs. So if they're going to give up points, they're going to give up points to that big hauling tight end in the middle of the field with Pittsburgh, as we've seen Eric Ebron to be over really the past 3 years. So I'm going to mention Ebron. And then finally, my last one I'm going to mention before we pretty much get out of this video. I have Gerald Everett, 8 spots higher than consensus. Again, he's the new tight end, one of the Los Angeles Rams. Even before Tyler Higbee got ruled out for this game, I already had Everett ranked higher. I mean, this is a guy who's been steadily outplaying him over the last 4 weeks. And as a low tight end too, you could really do much worse than the guy in Gerald Everett, who's really got the athleticism to take one for basically to the house. So I don't love him, but I mean, the fact of the matter is the tight end landscape is just such a fucking jumbled mess. You may as well take a shot.
You might have to play him. Like there's a chance that you might have to. And we have keep in mind we have no bye weeks this week, and I have Kyle Rudolph as my tight end 17. That's how bad the tight end position is. I have Mike Gesicki, who's been terrible, as my tight end 16.
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, we're at 58 minutes in the video, so we're going to wrap this up really. If you guys like this video, as always, make sure you go comment down below what your favorite parts are of the video. With that being said, we will see you guys on Sunday morning for our weekly live stream. Take it easy, y'all. Week 12 underway. Go wrap up that playoff spot. See ya.
Peace out.